Yeah, we're.
Good evening, everyone. I'm calling the Wednesday, March 11th Board of Supervisors Budget Work Session to order. If I can get everyone to stand up for the Pledge of Allegiance and moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And moment of silence. Thank you.
Uh-oh. Now we're in trouble.
Just letting everyone know that Supervisor Geno is joining us remotely due to personal reasons, and he's listening in and is able to ask questions or comment if needed.
And vote.
And vote.
Such important things like adopting meeting.
Which I will make a motion to do.
Excellent. Have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. All right, budget work session. I think this is all mine.
This is me? Yes.
Jesse Rock, not Jesse Rocker yet.
She makes an appearance multiple times in here.
That's okay.
Of course she does.
We'll have to figure out an opposite symbol for low key, no worries,
Okay.
instead of.
Maybe that's a Jimmy Buffett somehow.
Yeah.
Flip flop.
Okay. When there's a guarantee in the budget, I'll put a flip flop in.
That's hilarious. I like that.
So the fiscal 27 budget, you have every single number that's associated with the budget in this binder. In the left-hand pocket is tonight's presentation, but it will also be up on the screens here. So, next slide, please.
Let's rearrange it.
Thank you. Next slide, thank you. So the last, 3 or 4 years now that I have presented the budget, I've kind of dived right into all the details of the numbers right away. And I realized as I was thinking about this budget that doing that might cause somebody either on the board or in the public to miss something important. So this time I wanted to take a different approach, and I will provide a summary of the figures at the outset. So just a high level by fund total for each fund. Then I want to remind all of us of where we're starting this budget. So we are in the middle of fiscal 26. There were some things in the 26 budget that didn't come to fruition. So I want to tell you where we're starting this budget. Then I'm going to talk about specifically big picture things that are in the budget. And then how are those things funded? I want to narrate that instead of going through every nitty-gritty detail. And then I would like to go through a couple slides of what decisions do the two of us need from the board in order to advance this budget or other implementation of things that are in this budget. And then I'll get into the details. And the details will be, as they usually are, specific to the general fund, year-over-year changes. Then I'll talk about the dollar. Very important to this budget are the capital projects. The capital projects are a large driver of this budget. The fire services fund, and then in the appendix will be a number of pie charts, graphs, and other things that will be necessary for all of our reference as we go through this process. Finally, if I can remember it, when we get to the end, I want to jump to the fiscal 27 budget webpage on the county's website, so you can see what's there, and so the public can be aware of what's there. That is an invaluable source of information. Of course, I'm a little biased, but there's a lot of information
That's
there.
the teaching the fish part of it.
That's the teaching the fish part, yes. So in terms of the total budget by fund, that's what this slide shows. It is slide 3 in your packet. There are 2 slides per page on your hard copy, so it's on the actual page too, but it's slide 3. I know that's super confusing. The general fund year-over-year change is an increase of $1,036,000. That seems like a quite large amount. You will see what those details are as we go forward. Small decrease in the social services fund, level funding in the CSA Children's Services Act fund, the sheriff and Commonwealth's attorney asset forfeiture funds, a decrease of $216,000 in the school operating fund, and that is largely because the transfer is reduced by the $300,000 for buses. There's a small decrease in the school cafeteria fund, an increase in the library fund, largely funded by an increase in state aid for libraries. There's no change in the law library fund, a $21,000 increase in the fire services fund, a $20,000 decrease in the EMS cost recovery fund, no change in the debt service fund, that remains 0 again for fiscal 27. All total, all the operating funds that are shown here, year-over-year difference of positive $804,000 or a 2.5% increase. The next slide starts out, and I have purposely shown capital projects funds separately. We have for many years had a capital projects fund that was the county's capital projects. This year, for the first time in a while, we have a school capital projects fund completely separate, and that's at $1,018,000. The biggest driver there is $765,000 for the elementary school roof. The 2 capital projects funds total $3.6 million for fiscal 27, a 1,400% increase year over year.
That's a positive development for them.
Yes, it is. That's the 2 funds combined. The 2 capital funds combined is the 1,400% increase. Transfers out year over year is an increase of $2.9 million. And again, you'll see why that is as we go through some of the details. Year over year for total expenditures plus transfers out, $7,058,687 or a 15.6% increase. Reminder of where we're starting this budget. So the fiscal 26 budget, as it was adopted, assumed increasing the meals and lodging tax rates from 4% to 6%. Following that public hearing last year, the board decided not to raise those rates. And so that's a starting point hole in the budget of $280,000. Also within the fiscal 26 budget, as it was adopted, was a total of $252,333 from the general fund balance that supported ongoing costs within the school operating fund. When the board gave advice to staff to level fund the schools in fiscal 27 relative to fiscal 26, the only thing that was removed from that transfer was the $300,000 for the buses. That $300,000 was truly the only one-time cost that was in last year's school budget. So that's a $252,000 hole added to the $280,000 hole. Also added after the fiscal 26 budget was adopted was a compensation board, partially compensation board funded assistant Commonwealth's attorney. And that was $28,103 net local cost for that entry-level assistant Commonwealth's attorney. All told, we were starting this budget development process $560,000 in the hole. With that, what general concepts are in this budget? Again, not a lot of dollar details here, but concepts, what's in the budget. As I just mentioned, The local funding to the schools is at the fiscal 26 level funding less the $300,506 for buses. That's a total local transfer to the schools of $10,561,192.
And that is the same value that Dr. Grimsley included in her proposed budget last night. The school board hasn't taken action.
Right. In this budget is $3.6 million for county and schools capital needs. There is no debt service added for those in fiscal 27. And you will see, and you just saw on the previous slide where I was showing the summary, that is because we are using a significant portion of the general fund balance to transfer to the county's capital and the school's capital to fund these needs in the first year. We will talk about this capital improvement plan in a lot more detail as we go through this budget development process. But as I mentioned to you in February when we initially introduced the capital improvement plan to you, we are assuming that some iteration of this potential for 1% local sales tax restricted to school construction and school capital will pass the General Assembly, be signed by the governor, and then be available for the board to consider placing on a November referendum. That is going to fund a significant dollar amount and a significant portion of the out years of the school's capital plan. And again, we can talk about the details when we get to that. This budget assumes a worst case scenario that Warren County will no longer support the Chester Gap Volunteer Fire Department, and as a result, paid EMT staffing is included in this budget for Flint Hill Volunteer Fire and Rescue. This budget backfills the $280,000 hole resulting from maintaining in fiscal 26 the meals and lodging tax rates at 4% each. It assumes a reduction in interest rate revenue as rates have declined. They are expected to decline again at least once more in calendar year 2026. And a portion of the general fund balance is used again for significant capital projects in fiscal 27's budget. This budget assumes full year revenue for school zone speed cameras. You're going to see that that's a significant expected increase year over year. Relatively significant. There's increased revenue here from sales tax. I've been reporting to you each month using the data that Nick is receiving from the state, that our sales tax in the current year is actually outpacing our projections, which is a good thing. And we are assuming for fiscal 27 that same revised projection for fiscal 26 plus 2%. This budget assumes continued funding for partner service agencies. It assumes a 2% cost of living adjustment plus a pay for performance adjustment that is calculated for budget purposes as up to 2%. So to call this a COLA is a little bit of a misnomer because the CPI for calendar year 2025 was 2.7%. So we are trying to get at a couple of things that are happening. We're trying to get at the cost of living that is increasing with the 2% COLA, and that would be applied across the board to all employees. With the performance adjustment that's included and is calculated based on up to 2% of the budget, salaries budget, we are trying to get at moving people along the scale, moving employees along the scale. So a couple of years ago, 2023, October 2023, the board adopted for the first time a pay scale. Employees at that time were placed on the pay scale, given different factors. The first year thereafter, fiscal 24, there was no adjustment to that pay scale whatsoever. The next 2 years, fiscal 25 and 26, we adjusted the pay scale itself by the pay adjustments that were adopted in the budget.
The COLA.
The whole pay scale was adjusted by that. So all employees receive some sort of adjustment associated with that. But what happens is because we're not able to provide any sort of pay for performance, some places call it merit, Those employees are on the same spot on the scale as they were in 2023 when we placed them there. So if somebody was in an entry-level slot in 2023, they're still in an entry-level slot 4 years later, and somebody new who's coming in the door is being paid at that same entry-level slot. We're trying to address that, at least a portion of that compression with this pay for performance. Included in this budget, we received from our health insurance company a 10.15% increase in health insurance premiums. That is on top of the 11.5% increase in health insurance premiums that occurred in last year's budget. What we have done in this recommended budget is adjusted the complement of the employer and employee premium shares such that the $133,000 added cost of that premium increase is split evenly in sum, and I'm focusing on in sum between the employer and the employees. We have really taken a look at the entire complement of splits and tried to not put the majority of the burden on the most expensive family plans. We've tried to space that out in such a way that in total, the employer is paying half of the $133,000 cost, and the employees who are participating in the plan are paying half of that. And there's some information in the appendix of this presentation that helps you see what we're talking about there. We are removing the double counting of a long-term disability benefit for VRS Plan 1 and Plan 2 employees. In VRS, which is the Virginia Retirement System, there are 3 plans. There's Plan 1, which is very long tenured people at this point. There's Plan 2, I think Plan 2 started maybe in 2010 or thereabout. And there's hybrid employees who are the more recent employees, maybe since like 2013 or 14. When VRS implemented the hybrid plan, there is no VRS disability associated with the hybrid plan employees. And so VRS at that time said all localities need to provide a disability benefit for their hybrid employees that don't have that benefit through VRS. And Rappahannock at that time, obviously I wasn't here, so I don't know what the reasoning was behind it. Rappahannock at that time provided that benefit for the hybrid employees to all employees. So now Plan 1 and Plan 2 have this local long-term disability benefit in addition to the VRS Plan 1 and Plan 2 disability benefit, which essentially are the same benefits. And so that is a $14,500 cost that we're able to cull out of the budget by reducing like benefits. Also in this budget are operating savings in telephone and internet costs being realized from the transition to the voice over IP and fiber installation project. There is approximately 1/2 of the cost of the 2028 reassessment happening in fiscal 27. The other half is anticipated for fiscal 28. And you will see some revenue adjustments that we are recommending happen associated with that. There is funding for a 4th deputy clerk position. There's part state funding, part local funding for that. There are 5 additional part-time hours per week at the library. There's conversion of part-time funding to allow for an additional full-time position at the Amosville Refuse and Recycling Center. There is the county's share, a small share of a new Fauquier County employee that will service, maintain, and program public safety radios. And there is funding in this budget to contract on a proactive basis IT services for the county. And that means network administration, support, security management, server care, and the like. The key word there being proactive, which is very important these days.
And different from how it's been handled
Yes.
till now.
How is this funded? How's everything we talked about funded? There's a recommended increase in the land use validation fee from the $60 per parcel that it is now to $140 per parcel going forward. Likewise, the land use application fee is recommended to increase from $60 plus 25 cents per acre to $140 plus 25 cents per acre. And this increase in these rates will fully fund the 2028 reassessment costs. These fees, I should have had a little Sally Jesse Raphael pair of glasses beside this. These fees are set by ordinance. So in order to do this, the board would need to authorize staff to advertise a public hearing, and then the board would need to hold a public hearing to do this.
This is something Mary mentioned to you when she came and spoke to you the last meeting, and essentially said that last cycle, the revalidation fees paid for about half of the assessment. So about doubling these fees, we'll make that fully paid for.
And I should be clear that the revalidation fee occurs every 6 years, and the reapplication fee occurs once when somebody applies for land use.
The application, not reapplication.
The application, yes, sorry, application. This budget recommends increasing the lodging rate from the current 4% to 10%, and that brings in obviously additional general use revenue, as well as additional funds restricted to tourism. There's a recommendation to increase the meals rate from the current 4% to 5%. This does assume a savings in the transfer to social services based on multiple years of budget savings in that transfer. This assumes, like I said, the operating savings to be realized from the transition to the voice over IP and fiber installation project. Savings from a new contract for email services, that's a 3-year contract. It assumes an increase in the real estate tax for the fire levy from 7 to 8 cents, and that is primarily to pay for the additional staffing at Flint Hill. It's an increase in the real estate tax for general levy from 56 cents to 57 cents. And in big picture terms, the next slide please, thank you. The decisions that, over the course of this budget development process, the decisions that staff needs from the board are, is there support for the 2% cost of living adjustment?
Which right now it looks like the General Assembly is likely to include
Yes.
in the adopted budget is 2% for state responsible employees. And so that's why we kind of settled on that same 2%.
Yes, thank you. Is there support for the pay for performance? That would be 100% locally funded, the pay for performance. Excuse me. The caboose bill, the General Assembly caboose budget for fiscal 26, which is basically just their version of the amended fiscal 26 budget, includes an additional 2% bonus for state-supported local employees. So we will need to know from the board, would you like to implement another 2% bonus in fiscal 26, or would you like to forego that? Would you choose to forego that in favor of the pay for performance? And again, Sally Jesse Raphael appears there because bonuses require an ordinance before any implementation.
It just
Which is
occurred to
odd.
me to the two new board members don't really know why you're referring to Sally Jesse Raphael.
I was gonna say, my wife has the same glasses, so
Susan Whitson.
she's probably offended.
So I think 2 budgets ago, we started putting in this little icon of the glasses for where we wanted the board and the public to have their eyes wide open on any given topic. And Ms. Smith at that time said that the glasses reminded her of Sally Jesse Raphael. So we just started having a running joke thereafter about Sally and Raphael.
We're of that generation,
Yes.
for
Yes.
sure.
Where am I here? Okay. Is there support for the adjusted health insurance splits? And the whole reason we're doing that is because costs continue to escalate and it's difficult to work the full cost, which I said was $133,000, into a budget on top of salary adjustments and all of the other needs within the budget.
And when you look at the details, you'll see that the family plan for the higher level plan, the cost for that is $35,000 a year. So you can see how it gets very difficult for a locality to be able to do that sort of thing. The schools have to take very drastic measures in their proposed budget, and Dr. Grimm's proposed budget around health insurance as well.
The adjustment to the meals rate, to the lodging rate, is there support for that and balance in the budget? Again, those rates are adopted by ordinance and will require a public hearing specific to each rate and separate from the budget public hearing.
I'm sorry, Bob, we're on meals rate, lodging rate.
Yes.
Okay, I'm tracking
And Bonnie and I chatted about schedule. It's my desire to have the board consider that public hearing at your May meeting, which is likely to align with when you might consider adopting a budget, rather than having that public hearing follow, by a month or something like last year.
Yep.
Put it all together.
And be effective July 1.
Yes.
If the board supports and ultimately adopts the budget, assuming the lodging rate increase, there are, as I mentioned, additional revenues associated with the restricted tourism from that, and we will need to know how the board would like to use that funding for tourism purposes. Otherwise, it will be reserved within the budget for your later decision. Use of the general fund balance for capital in fiscal 27, you will see that is quite a bit of money that is being assumed as used from the general fund. Essentially, the funds available within the general fund balance over and above the policy level reserves will virtually be none. But capital projects will be accomplished. So there's a trade-off there. And then, assuming that the General Assembly approves and the governor signs this legislation related to the referendum on 1% sales tax, we'll need guidance from you as to whether you want us to pursue all the steps that are necessary to set that up. The first being an adoption of a resolution from the board asking the circuit court to approve the question for placement on the referendum. So all of that will need to happen very quickly, even though the referendum wouldn't be until November. So now that I've given you a general overview of all the things that are in the budget, I want to quickly go through some of the numbers, and obviously you will have this here in front of you for reference all throughout this process. But just so you have an idea of what each of these things costs. Personnel budget changes, and all of these numbers are specific to year-over-year changes in the general fund. I'll get to another slide about capital and then another slide about the fire services fund as well. But up front, let's talk about general fund. In terms of personnel budget changes, we are removing the one-time bonuses that were already approved in fiscal 26 and that happened July 1, 2025. Those were $58,963. Again, just for clarity, these are changes year over year. So what is either in fiscal 27 that wasn't in fiscal 26, or what was in fiscal 26 that has now been taken out for fiscal 27. So let me start again. We're removing the one-time fiscal 26 bonuses. We're removing double counting that I found of sheriff's office court security that I had mistakenly included in two places in the fiscal 26 budget. It's in the court security line item. It's also in the sheriff's office salaries and wages.
You're supposed to blame me for the bad thing.
Gary did that one.
Yeah.
Everything else I didn't do. $29,645 is removed. So if you look at that salaries and wages line item, it's actually decreasing year over year for fiscal '27, and that's the reason. We are removing the double counting of the long-term disability benefit for VRS plans 1 and 2. That's $14,500. We are assuming the budget, as was assumed in the fiscal '26 amended budget, an assistant attorney is added in the Commonwealth's Attorney's Office, $134,731. We are, excuse me, adding a fourth deputy clerk in fiscal '27, as approved by the compensation board. That's $96,797. There are more jury trials occurring, and the clerk has advised that we should increase the jury payments line item for next year. There is also somewhat partially offsetting revenue from the state for those, and that's increasing the jury payments by $5,000. We are adding a 2% salary adjustment commensurate with what is currently in the state budget, as Gary said, $100,337. It's important that I note here, that's the full general fund expense. This is the expense side of the budget we're talking about. The compensation board revenue that comes from the state to help support that is on the revenue page of this.
Not a net
presentation.
expense, it's the full expense.
Correct, this is the full expense. The pay for performance, for calculation purposes, we have assumed a 2% pay adjustment. And this is pay for performance, so it's going to have to somehow be linked to performance evaluations that we don't currently have, so that's a whole new policy, Supervisor Comer, that we need to come up with and take care of. So we don't have all the details at this point, but for budget purposes, it's been calculated at 2%. That's $100,606. The health insurance adjustment, $50,414 is the general fund portion picked up by the employer. And then various other adjustments throughout the general fund budget is actually a decrease of $34,515 for personnel. Total personnel changes of $350,000. Other general fund expenditure adjustments throughout the budget. We don't have a final jail number yet. The jail placeholder assumes a 2% pay increase and 35 vacant positions at the jail remain vacant for fiscal '27. That's a $44,000 increase over this year's payment. Police supplies, it includes an increase of $10,000 for increased radio replacement costs and other costs related to police supplies. Water and gas testing for refuse purposes is increasing $10,000. That's based on actual costs. The Juvenile Detention Center, there is a known need, that should say for, not or. There's a known need for 109 bed days in fiscal '27. There is a youth who is there, who will be there through at least the middle of October. So we are assuming in this budget, those 109 bed days plus 20 other bed days for use that may occur during fiscal '27. That's a $7,515 increase. The refuse site improvements, routine mowing that occurs now, clearing and miscellaneous expenses based on those actual costs are increasing $7,500. Also based on actual costs, the hauling and treatment of leachate from Amosville is $5,000 increase. Postage accounts throughout the budget, throughout the general fund budget are increasing $3,000. Website services costs to include an added federal requirement for ADA compliance is increasing $2,000. Reductions in telephone and internet driven by the network modernization project. This is just the telephone and internet portion, is a reduction of $21,000. There are some added costs within IT contracts for things like server maintenance and monitoring that would offset that. Removing the Planning Commission's fund balance funded professional services that have not been used for multiple years. That's a reduction of $50,000. It's also $50,000 that's not being used from the fund balance to pay for that. Other miscellaneous adjustments throughout the budget are $9,154 for a total of $26,900. Next slide. Adjustments for either restricted revenue items or other items that have a one-for-one change in revenue. That is the other tourism line. This exists with the change in the lodging tax, even up to 5%. Everything 6% and thereafter has no restriction for tourism. It is that 4 to 5% that causes us to need to, by law, restrict dollars for tourism. That amount is $79,591. The Water and Sewer Authority payroll and related costs, that is increasing $5,000. That has a one-for-one increase of $5,000 on the revenue coming from the Water and Sewer Authority to pay for this. The Clerk's Technology Trust Fund account, that is for various records preservation projects. The revenue is increasing $4,561. The expense increasing $4,561. Same thing with the litter control program. That expense is increasing $4,000 with an offsetting grant revenue of $4,000. $4,000 increase. New investments. I've mentioned these once, but I want to put $1 to them here. The paid coverage at Flint Hill Volunteer Fire and Rescue, and in bold red letters there, assuming the worst case scenario for budget purposes, that Chester Gap is no longer funded in any way by Warren County. This is an increase in expenses of...
In the general fund.
In the general fund, yes. Increased expenses in the general fund of $284,442.
And that's not a net increase in that amount, it's just has been being paid out of the fire services fund, but this would be services performed by county employees, so it would be paid out of the general fund.
And there will be a transfer from the fire services fund to the general fund to pay for that. You'll see that on the next page.
And if we just put a marker in that to talk about later, because this goes back to my long stated belief that there's perhaps a better way to demonstrate to the public and for our board to track EMS related expenditures in a single place. Sorry.
Partial costs of the 2028 reassessment, with approximately half being in the fiscal 27 budget and an assumption of another half being in the fiscal 28 budget, is $131,050. Contracted IT security and support, again, that's not something that we are doing proactively at this point, but definitely need to, $101,400. The Sheriff's Office has requested and is included in this budget in-car cameras. This is all equipment like this, all public safety equipment has moved to kind of a subscription-based plan where you pay for a entity pays for this over usually a 5-year period, and you're paying for the equipment over that 5-year period and the software subscription to whatever software goes along with this. The Sheriff's Office in-car cameras are $38,000, and that would be a 5-year contract, $38,000 every year for 5 years. With the assumption then that in year 6, you would start over again. Public safety radio servicing, maintenance, and programming. This is the county share of that Fauquier County employee. It's a new, recommended new employee in the Fauquier budget, $11,000. Total new investments of $566,000. Next slide. This is showing year-over-year changes in general fund transfers out to other funds. I've mentioned a number of times that the only change in the transfer out to the school operating fund is the removal of the $300,506 for buses. That number you see here. There's a change in the transfer to the library of $6,716. A change in the transfer to the social services fund, a reduction of $48,514. And again, that is because I'm assuming that instead of budgeting that transfer exactly as requested, based on savings for the last 3 years in our transfer to social services, I have reduced that amount.
Which in large part likely come from vacancy savings due to staff turnover in social services.
Right, so there should be some glasses there, eyes wide open. This is based on what has actually, been happening for at least the last 3 years. If there is full staffing, we won't have that savings. I would love for there to be full staffing.
Amen.
Thanks for being here, by the way.
Just in case there's any questions.
The capital projects fund, there is a year-over-year increase in the transfer to the capital projects fund for county capital projects, $2,355,700. Certainly the largest single project there is designed for the courthouse. School capital projects fund, there is a transfer from the general fund to the school operating fund of $368,395.
School capital fund?
School capital projects fund, yes. $368,395. That will support 2 things. In addition to the $450,000 state grant for the roof, this $368,000 will fund the balance of the roof project and the local match associated with that grant. It will also fund replacement of boiler piping that the schools say is in dire need of replacement as soon as possible. You may recall from our February conversation of HVAC projects at the schools, there's quite a bit of need there as identified by a third-party assessor. And we have moved the largest part of that out of fiscal 27 into fiscal 28 to better align with the timing of that 1% local sales tax should the board choose to go forward with that. Should the board and the public. The voters have to approve that.
And Dr. Grimsley had some folks talk to the school board at their last meeting about capital, and I believe they will be at your joint meeting next week to provide both bodies an update.
So in total, if you can just go back to that slide 1 second. In total, general fund year-over-year expenses are increasing $3,417,000. And that does include the transfers out, which are the largest portion of that $3.4 million. Okay, now we're switching gears on this slide to the revenue side of the general fund. Year-over-year changes. Compensation board and funding from the Board of Elections is expected to increase $197,000. Certainly the largest portion of that is for the 2% pay adjustment. Also included there would be that assistant Commonwealth's attorney. And the Board of Elections is requiring all localities in the state to have a chief deputy registrar or chief deputy director of elections. And so this assumes costs, actually this assumes revenue, that there is some revenue to help us pay for the existing deputy to be moved to the chief deputy slot. Real estate revenue at the existing rate of 56 cents per 100 is expected to generate $181,000 in additional revenue in fiscal 27.
New construction additions.
Yes. Sales tax, I mentioned earlier, and I've mentioned to you for multiple months in a row now, sales tax in the current year is exceeding our projections. So for fiscal 27, we have assumed the revised fiscal 26 projection plus 2%. And that revenue is an additional $133,500. Speed zone camera fines, we were anticipating only $18,000 in fiscal 26.
Which was a partial year.
Yes, which was partial year. It was also assuming a very light rate of violations. And based on only 2 months at this point of actual revenue, the sheriff has advised that we assume $10,000 in revenue for the 9 months that school is in session. So $90,000 for fiscal 27. Personal property revenue is going up to some degree. $40,645.
And no rate change.
No rate change. The 911 grants are expected to increase. There's a new public safety answering point grant that we anticipate being able to pay for some ongoing costs. So we are assuming that grant revenue will increase $23,857 to pay for those ongoing costs. Recordation and wills are going up $10,000. When I say going up, this is revenue from existing fee rates and tax rates. There's no assumption of increased fee rates here.
And for most of these, like cameras and grants, they're forecasts.
Yes.
So they're assumptions. We have no idea what's going to happen 18 months from now, but they're forecasts.
The courthouse construction fee, that is a new fee in fiscal '27. We're anticipating $9,000 that's a new fee in fiscal '26, but was implemented after the budget was adopted. We're anticipating $9,000 in revenue in the current year, and I've assumed that again for fiscal '27. That $9,000 year over year will help us with the courthouse project. Small, but every little bit adds up. Jury duty reimbursement, we're anticipating that to increase by $6,000. Courthouse security fees, anticipating that revenue to increase by $5,000. As I mentioned before, revenue from RCWSA increasing by $5,000 to pay the $5,000 increase in cost expected for that authority. The Technology Trust Fund revenue is increasing $4,561. The litter control grant that has a like amount of expenditure increase on the expense side is increasing $4,000. The litter control grant is what helps with the very popular shred event. Everybody loves those shred events.
That's great.
Based on actual participation in fiscal '26, we're anticipating fiscal '27 revenue from refuse disposal fees for Culpeper residents to decrease $5,020. That's no decrease in the fee, that's a decrease in the participation.
And that actually assumes a CPI increase in the fee rate.
Zoning fees in the current year are somewhat behind our projection, and so we have reduced our projection for fiscal '27 by $5,800. Public Service Corporation revenue is decreasing by $6,751. Public Service Corporation, all that is real estate and personal property on utilities. So
Maybe after the first energy project is done, that will be valued more and this could go up, but that's a few years out.
yes, and it should be noted just for general information that Public Service Corporation assessed values are determined by the State Corporation Commission, not by the local Commissioner of Revenue. The cigarette tax, we are definitely bringing in less than what was projected for that. And so I have married the fiscal '27 recommended revenue amount to what I think was likely to happen in fiscal '26. That's a reduction year over year of $16,650. EMS grants in fiscal '26, we learned that the state would no longer provide the software subscription for patient care reporting, and that each locality would have to fund that on their own. However, in the first year, which was fiscal '26, the state did provide a grant to pay for that. That was $19,028. We are not anticipating that grant to be available again going forward, so that grant revenue is down to zero for fiscal '27. Court fines and forfeitures, based on the rate of revenue coming in this year, I have reduced that revenue by $20,000 for fiscal '27. The SAFER grant, sorry. Next slide, please. The SAFER grant, that has a one-for-one grant revenue to match to expenses. That's reduced by $21,939 in fiscal '27. Bank franchise fee revenue isn't coming in at the $122 that we projected for fiscal '26, or at least isn't expected to come in at that rate. So I've reduced that to $100,000 for fiscal '27. Interest earnings, there are the glasses again. We have, for a number of years, relied on increased fluctuating revenues to support ongoing costs. And we have had these glasses beside interest earnings for the last 2 to 3 years. This is another year where we have the glasses here. As we make use of the fund balance for capital needs and other needs within the budget, and as interest rates decline, we are inevitably expecting to receive less revenue from interest earnings. So I've reduced that by $90,000 in fiscal '27. The meals and lodging at the 4% rate is a reduction of $280,000 because the budget was adopted assuming a 6% rate. So that reduced this $280,000.
244?
Nope, 280, hold on.
Okay.
280. And then we're actually seeing a higher degree of revenue at that 4% than we projected for fiscal '26. So that offsets the $280,000 decline, so that the net decline in revenue is $244,000. Miscellaneous other revenue throughout the general fund budget is a net increase of $18,591. Notable changes in general fund transfers and use of fund balance are in the next block here. Transfer from the fire services fund, that is increasing $298,000, largely to help pay for that $280,000 increase in the general fund for the Flint Hill staffing. We are removing the use of fund balance for fiscal '26 expenses, and the use of fund balance in fiscal '26 was budgeted at $891,033. And we are adding the use of fund balance for one-time fiscal '27 expenses. That's $3.1 million, largely transferred to capital and to schools capital. You can see the details of that transfer on page 75 of your budget. Then finally, what new revenue are we including here to balance this budget? And again, that's an increase in the general levy, real estate from 56 to 57 cents. It's an increase in the lodging rate from 4% to 10%. That's general use, and it also has that restricted use portion there of $123,000. An increase in the meals rate from 4% to 5%. That's $89,000. So total general fund, a revenue increase of $3.4 million.
Which is mostly one-time transfer for capital.
Yes. Here's the breakdown of every tax dollar, not significant change year over year. Then the next slide here shows the capital projects, year-over-year changes. Obviously, it is unlikely that projects that were funded in fiscal '26 show up again in fiscal '27, but I felt the need to show them here so you can see what's not in the budget because it was already funded in fiscal '26. The design of the new courthouse, $1,765,000. Public safety radio refresh and upgrade project, $469,000. Sheriff vehicle replacements, this assumes 2 vehicles are replaced each year. These replacements have a significant cost increase. 1, because vehicle costs are going up, but 2, because we have, for whatever reason, split this in the budget the last, as far back as I know. To where the upfit of those vehicles with equipment was being funded out of the operating fund, and the vehicles themselves were being funded out of the capital fund. I have married those two things together and reduced the operating budget by the upfit and included it in the capital budget so that the full cost of those vehicles is now in the capital budget. Replacement of the quick response vehicle, that's $110,000. This is an additional $75,000 for the garage and processing building. Replace the tractor at Amosville, $47,000. Replace the zero-turn mower at the courthouse campus, $9,500. And that makes up the $2.6 million in the capital projects fund for fiscal '27. The next slide shows the school capital projects fund. This is the $754,000 cost of replacing the elementary school roof with a metal roof. $450,000 of that $754,000 is funded by a state grant. There's $150,000 for ADA upgrades to the RCS adult restrooms. $63,795 for the RCHS boiler piping replacement that I mentioned earlier. And then $50,000 for design of upgrades to the sewage treatment plant.
And that's funded both by general fund and the $200,000 school capital fund that
Yes,
they get from the state each year.
yes. Notable changes within the fire services fund. So now we're turning our attention from the general fund to the fire services fund. And note that these changes are what is driving the recommendation for an added penny on the fire levy. Again, the budget assumes the worst case scenario of no staffing funding for Chester Gap coming from Warren County, and that service is now going to be provided by Flint Hill.
By Rappahannock County at the Flint Hill Station.
Yes, thank you. It's a transfer to general fund from the fire services fund for the cost of that patient reporting software that is anticipated to no longer be supported by the state grant. That's $25,000. Increase in operational support to the companies based on their requests. I will note these requests have not been thoroughly reviewed by staff, nor have they been approved by the fire levy board at this point. That's a $195,000 increase based on actual calendar year '25 expenses that they submitted.
And remember, the board authorized a policy change there, defining capital as anything that costs more than $25,000. And so there's an expectation that these costs would increase and have increased because these stations can now submit $24,000 expenses as part of their bill submission for fire levy, and that's acceptable. Whereas before, if it was $11,000, it would be kicked out and deemed capital.
And finally, under fire services fund, the glasses appear here again, because even with the added 1 penny on the fire levy, we are still making use of $124,000 of the fire services fund balance. That will draw that fund balance down to $33,000, an estimated $33,000. So very little will be there in that fund should something arise that the board needs to take action on for the fire services fund.
And so if the Warren County funding comes through, that the penny would still be needed, you would just be closer to balanced.
Yeah.
And then this slide shows the calendar as you adopted it, with our next meeting to occur on Monday, a budget work session at 2 p.m. again here at the courthouse. And you can see the whole list of meeting dates there. Also next week is the joint budget work session with the school board, 6:30 at the elementary school gym.
So at that point, both the school board and the board of supervisors have received recommended budgets. You both are seeing things that maybe didn't make the budget that you wanted to make the budget, or increases in revenue that you aren't particularly fond about, and that'll allow you both to ask questions to staff on how to reconcile those concerns and how the two budgets can mesh. Right now, the two budgets are aligned with that level transfer from 26 to 27. There was plenty of conversation at the school board meeting about the heavy impact on school employees due to increased health insurance costs. And so there's a lot of concern there. I'm sure you'll hear about that during your joint meeting.
And so finally, I'll just very quickly, I'm not going to do any narration of these slides. I just want to quickly go through and show you what's in the appendix. There's an expenditures by funds pie chart, a revenue by type for all funds pie chart, expenditures by function for all funds pie chart, expenditures by category for all funds pie chart. There is a breakdown of the health insurance showing what the fiscal 26 current premium splits are, as well as what the recommended premium splits are for fiscal 27. You can see there how those are changing.
This should be a detailed conversation at maybe your next meeting or one of your work sessions, because this is a departure from the past where we're no longer recommending the county fully pay the employee-only premium.
And the red box here is here to signify the KA 1000, you might remember, is our base plan at this point. And that change occurred with last year's budget adoption.
Employees would be expected to cover 5% of that, which is $48 a month.
The next slide is also about health insurance. This shows what the yearly premium is for each plan and each need within that plan, single, dual, family. There you can see the KA 250 plan, which is no longer our base plan. That's the $35,316. That is the full yearly premium for that plan that Gary mentioned earlier.
So EE, employee, ER, employer. So in the headings, you can see the cost share overall for year.
Next slide, we are showing you what other localities' meals rates are in blue, and then our current meals rate of 4% in yellow. Next slide, same thing, but for lodging taxes. A range here from 0 all the way up to 11%. The box there for both of those taxes, meals and lodging, reminds all of us that these are trust taxes. They are paid by the customer to the vendor. The vendor then holds those in trust and remits them to the county however frequently they are due. The next three slides are a reminder of the eyes wide open. And I just put here in written form what I tried to convey as I was going through about each of those so you can reference them again. And then the very last thing I wanted to do, if you can go back to the first page of the overview, there's a link to the county webpage, and I just wanted to go there quickly.
Switch it All right.
So, from the county webpage, you go to government, and then budget, click on budget, scroll down, and then fiscal 27 budget.
Very nice.
Generally, I just send you the direct link to this page, but I wanted to show that so that people in the audience and anybody who's listening could find that as well. On this page are all sorts of things. There's the budget calendar, there's the responses to all the fiscal 27 budget questions. Can you click on that for a second?
Which, if you go to the FY26 page or the FY25 page, you can see the questions from that year.
Yes, all that information is out there. So as we go through the budget process, and you can see this has already started for this year, we track all the budget questions that are asked of either us or the school staff and provide a formal response here. That helps as we're going through this process, or as Gary just pointed out, it helps for our future processes as well, because we can go back and see what information we provided before.
And to Mr. Whitson's pin he mentioned earlier, there is a question about where can we see all of the fire and rescue costs rolled up? That's question number 3, and there is a response that we can talk back to that.
Yeah, I mean, it's not really, I don't really have a question on that point any longer. It's more, how can we show our financials differently? But we can talk about that later.
Okay. The capital improvement plan, the CIP, is here. There is a revised version here that matches one for one with what we presented today. Remember, I noted that we needed to move out some of the school's HVAC projects, most of their HVAC projects, to fiscal '28 to align with the timing of that 1% revenue. So this version today is the version that aligns with the recommended budget. There are, new today, regional service agencies and partner budget requests. If you click on that, every partner agency that submitted a request is out here. Their request documentation is out here. If you're curious about them, please look there. This is the same information that I have. Then tonight's presentation this link is the actual full recommended budget document. If you are able to open this, not you, Gary, but if a person goes there and is able to open this directly in Adobe or some other PDF reader, on the left-hand side will be bookmarks. I find those extraordinarily helpful. You can click there and go back and forth and move about in the document as you like.
And if they just open it up in their reader and then they download it.
Yes.
And then they can do
And then as we go along all these various budget work sessions and budget meetings, the documents that we provide the board will be linked here as well. That's it.
Pretty awesome.
It's like she's done this before.
Thank you for simplifying it, I mean, it's,
You're
I
welcome.
like, you brought it back.
I did too. I thought it was a good approach.
It's great.
It's, you don't want people's eyes to gloss over behind their red glasses in the first 5 minutes, right?
Oh, yeah.
You held our attention. You
number
did very well.
paralysis.
I wanted you to know what was in there, and then we could focus on the numbers.
Yep. Ireland and Tim will tell you, don't bury the lead, right?
So, digging out of a decent sized hole from last year, I thought it was going to be really doom and gloom. But natural revenue growth helped in that area. As you saw, your real estate tax revenue just due to additions in new construction. A few other lines went up. We do have some revenues that are forecasted to go lower. But at the end of the day, you're able to fill that $500,000 hole plus several new initiatives for 1 penny real estate general fund, 1 penny fire levy, the 10% lodging, and 5% meals. In a nutshell, is where it all comes together.
Yep.
And so the difficult part now is to figure out whether all those puts and takes on the expense side are aligned with your vision, and then what revenue sources are needed to ultimately fund what you want to fund between now and, I guess, late March, early April, when we'll need to know what you want to advertise for public hearing, which will happen late in April after a few rounds of notices in the paper.
Regarding revenue growth, I did have a question before I forgot. Bonnie's magic number that I used to carry in my wallet on a card. Thank you. I was looking at the screen, not reading my book. So it was 193 on a penny on the real property tax rate, and I saw that you quietly left it at 181 in the presentation. Did I miss something?
No, you didn't miss anything. We're talking about two different things. The 181 is the natural growth year over year in revenue at the 56-cent constant rate.
Okay, I was thinking that it was a somehow we, like, real estate devalued, and I was gonna say it's impossible.
Yeah, so if you took the 181 and you did the math, you could see how much additional assessed value is in the system.
Okay, I got you, so.
Yeah, the value of a penny, just real estate by itself, is $198,000.
Okay, so that's,
Yeah, I want to explain something though. So in your book is this thing from last time. this per penny, real estate, it says about $206,000. I just said 198. When the real estate rate is adjusted, that affects Public Service Corporation revenue as well. And so this is the combined real estate and Public Service Corporation add from a 1 penny increase.
I got you. We can still say 200,000.
You can still say 200,000.
Yeah, it's good when the numbers are round. I think our overall real property tax rate should be round too, and I think I have a suggestion now to do that, so.
Around what?
We should have a round number on a real property tax rate too, that everyone can remember. 63 is not a number.
Okay. You thinking like $1 even or something?
That's really funny. I was thinking the other direction.
If it doesn't grow legs and take off.
We did that in the sewer authorities very well. I mean, it was like, finally, we landed on a sewer rate that everyone could remember.
Do we want to go around the table with any questions or? Actually,
So many.
John, I know you're on the call. Do you want to kick off with anything that you've got?
Sure, yeah. Well, thank you, Bonnie and Gary, for putting this together. This is very thorough and easily understood, so great job putting this together. My biggest question was the cost of living adjustment and the pay for performance. So is the cost of living adjustment is an adjustment to salary that we carry forward? The pay for performance would be a bonus, a one-time bonus, is that right? Or is the pay for performance an adjustment to salary also?
It's an adjustment to salary also.
So the differentiation would be, COLA would be applied across the board, and the pay for performance or merit would be a different strategy. Not all employees might get the same amount for that. It depends on, their dynamic within their department.
Okay, and I think you mentioned we currently don't have a kind of a metric to base that pay for performance on, but that's something we could develop.
Right.
Which this would be coming into effect in July with the FY27 budget, so that gives the runway to pull that together. I should note that that pay for performance piece doesn't apply to myself, your two contract employees, myself and Mr. Goff.
Okay. Thanks, that's the only question. I'm sure I'll have a million other questions as I dig into this further, but that was the biggest question I had.
Thank you. Mr. Whitson, are you ready, or you want to?
Sure, but you can let other people go, because you're gonna need an energy drink when it comes to me to survive what I have to say.
Okay. Mr. Suttle.
If you would pull your mic up so John can definitely.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to kind of dovetail on what John was talking about with regards to the pay for performance. And, what I heard earlier is, there is no merit-based plan in place now. And of course, you indicated we could, do this before July, maybe come up with something. I guess coming from an agency that relied on performance-based ratings in different levels, it's almost as if we're assuming everyone's going to be meeting expectations within their performance. And if we haven't been doing that, and then I'm all about compensating employees, because I think Bonnie described it right, and the key word was compression. And you bringing someone in at the same rate when someone has been here for 3 or 4 years, there's a multitude of problems with that. First of all, I don't know that you retain your employees, good employees, and it isn't fair. And I came from an agency where it cost $26 million to get out of a compression situation. and a lot of hoops, and it wasn't enough, but it was enough to break some balance. So, and a lot of that was based on having a solid merit rate plan. And if and I know we don't have, I know we've been talking about policy and putting those things in place. I'm not, I'm the biggest supporter about paying our folks for their performance and how well they do. But if we don't have a metric and we're just putting something in place just to meet a July deadline, and it's not, and maybe we're further along in that because I know that we've been working hard to try to get some policy together. I just caution us about that. And budget or a bonus versus bonuses. If I'm assuming it will be the same year, a bonus is just a bonus. It does not affect your retirement. Where to get the merit-based ratings right in the pay scale, that's great. And we've got to feed that to make sure our employees are moving up that ladder justifiably. But it also helps their retirement in the end. That keeps employees for us to retain them. So I just think there's some work there to be done, and maybe being a new guy coming in, there's been a lot of discussion about that. And I know it's important to the administration to have those things, but I just throw that out because it is it's a huge undertaking.
We did a couple years ago with the pay scales. We did correct a lot of compression issues when that rolled out. But what we haven't done since then is protect those employees when new people come in. So that's the second part of that. So we've largely fixed that compression issue at a point in time.
Yeah, and I think that's and I get that piece of it, because I always would say, for committees fighting for money for our people, if you don't take care, if you don't pay into that chart, you can fix it today, and at midnight tomorrow or tonight, you start to get compressed again. So there's got to be a commitment from the board to invest in our employees and hold them accountable too with regards to.
I'll say you're the new guy, but you're a very valuable new guy because you look at the Rappahannock County budget and that's practically loose change in the state police. So I know I would say it probably for everyone how grateful I am that you're here with your perspective. We're sure glad you're back in Rappahannock County.
Ms. Go.
Are you done? Like, did you have other questions?
No,
Okay. I just don't want to jump in line. I don't want to jump in front of you. So, I'm going to say it, right? I have been asking for a Rappahannock County employee handbook for, I think pretty much since day one. Maybe not day one, maybe 6 months in, because I too come from a place where that drives a lot of good workforce decisions and good employee decisions. But with that, I do want to say we probably are further along in that development than people might think at this point in time. So I want to thank Ms. Jewell for her continued work on that, because for the new guys, maybe people who haven't been paying attention to the reports and stuff, we are working on that, and this is exactly why such things are important. So with that, I have a couple questions. What the new employee, the Fauquier County employee to service, maintain the public safety rate, what is that?
This is a conversation that I've had with their county administrator over the last several years. As you're aware, we are regional partners in the public safety radio system, and we share maintenance costs, maintenance service contract. It's 50% Fauquier, 40% Culpeper, 10% Rappahannock County. And so we've discussed, we don't have staff to do these things, we've discussed investing in Fauquier County staff to help make this happen, and the same relative percentages for our region. So this $10,000-ish is 10% of somebody working Chuck Cooler's area.
Yeah, okay, all right. And then, let's see, that has been answered already. I do have some questions about the health insurance, but admittedly, I need time to wrap my head around it. That was really complicated for me last year. It's gonna be complicated again.
And we should say, the staff is not aware of what we just presented, and that'll be messaging going out to them like tomorrow.
Okay. Also, just for awareness purposes, for awareness purposes, I wanted to point out the $7,515 for the juvenile detention center. That is for 109 bed days. And I certainly don't want to chase a squirrel or go down a real deep rabbit hole or anything like that. So I just want to, and it's a little philosophical, maybe it's, I don't know, I'll just say it. When we don't invest in our students early, then we pay for them at some other point in time.
Good point.
And I am the board's representative on the CPMT committee. So somebody stop me if I start to say something I'm not supposed to say. But serving on that committee is very, very eye-opening, extremely eye-opening. So that number,
And that number is a change from one year to another, it's not the total number.
and yes, and that number could change tomorrow. If someone else makes a bad decision, some other young person makes a bad decision, that number could change. So again, we spend a lot of time talking about the cost per pupil in our school system. I just want to point out that cost, 109 days, is 109 days, and it's $7,515.
So the youth that we know will be required to stay in that facility.
Personnel at the Flint Hill, the Rappahannock, but starting out of Flint Hill, is that for how many people is that for?
It's one person, 24/7 EMTA. That is the full cost of that. It's not the differential cost above Chester Gas's current contract, which is $168,000 a year. So
Which
take
is
the 168,000 is the current cost, so subtracted to it is 116, I think. 116,000 premium to change the methodology, not do a cost share with our neighbor, a lot of changes. But that's the premium to use county staff with, FICA and all those things that aren't included with the contractors at Chester Gap, and we aren't benefiting by the cost share with our neighbors. Which might or might not be needed depending on how negotiations go with one county.
Okay, and then I know that this is something we'll, I'm sure, talk about many, many times over the course of the next several weeks and months. But you talk about the 1% sales tax. Do you know what is the estimate? I know it's just an estimate. What that would be? What is 1% sales tax?
That's the full value we get.
I want that number.
Yeah.
That's just-
1 point.
Right here.
Yeah, they involve
It's almost $1.2 million.
Okay.
It's $1,175,000 in fiscal '28.
So the county gets that. The schools get about that washed through a complicated formula. So of the 5.3%, 1% comes directly to the county, about 1% goes to all the schools and eventually to our school through a
No.
Right, but
formula.
it's, okay. 1.2 million
Yes,
would go to the schools.
yes. If approved,
Right, right.
all those steps, including the voters, $1.2 million would come to the county to be used for the school
Earmarked for the school capital
capital
improvement.
needs.
Okay,
Yes.
just, and then.
And by law, it cannot be used for anything else.
That's, okay. Yeah,
Would there be a cap on that? Is there any language about that?
In today's
There was
iteration,
a shelf life on it too.
literally, where we are is the question would have to say what the expiring date is. So if the board were to use that money to fund debt service on capital needs, which is not what we're talking about, the time frame of that tax would align with the payback of the debt. But we're not talking about that. What we're talking about is using that cash to pay cash for capital projects. And so our end date in today's iteration from the General Assembly would be 20 years.
Yeah.
The question would say it would expire in 20 years.
The House and Senate have slightly different visions,
Yeah, I read
and they're in conference,
Yes, sir.
yeah, which is a dark room that nobody knows what's happening.
Nobody knows better than you.
All too familiar, yeah. Wait and see.
you mentioned on, I guess it's slide 17, and this is, just $5,000, so, but I'm curious, in relation to zoning fees, you said something was somewhat behind,
Yeah.
can you repeat that?
Zoning fee revenue collection is somewhat behind projection in the current year.
Okay,
And so we have adjusted the fiscal 27 projection to match what we think we'll get in fiscal 26.
That's
Okay.
largely driven by how many special exception applications you get,
okay.
which are the big dollar applications that come.
Okay, and then, like I said, everything, I have a lot of questions about the health insurance, so I'll spend some time trying to understand that, and then I'm sure we'll hear some about it next week. And the only other thing I would say is, thank you for all of this hard work. Just kind of, I know that we keep using this phrase over and over, but a lot of kicking the can down the road, has I think, we're coming to the end of our road. And you've done a really good job pulling in all of these projects in focus for us and, showing us what they're gonna cost and to include like the handbook, things that you don't do, the little things that can add up and make kind of big impacts. The last thing I would mention is I think next on our list should be like an asset replacement plan. And to steal Supervisor Donahay's word, blatant, maybe in the coming year, after we get past the budget, we look at what a blatant asset replacement plan would look like. So
That's largely included in the CIP. Right now, we're small, we don't have a lot of assets.
well, sometimes when you're small and you don't have a lot, it seems like more. So,
Maybe
anyhow.
the word might be explicit, clear.
Easy to separate, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's it. Thank you so much. You always do such a good job.
Thank you.
Mr. Whitson?
Do you want to go first?
No.
See, the
You
problem.
may ask all the questions I have, so I wouldn't.
No, the problem with that though is, and I learned this working in a law firm, that I go first, then you might be able to rebut.
think we're on the same
Chair's
team.
prerogative.
Hopefully we are, but I'm gonna play disruptor a little bit, so you might, and I welcome your rebuttal, and I'm grateful for all of you as colleagues. All right, so as not to bury the lead, and borrowing Miss Jewell's construct that she used for her presentation, I will quickly give a summary of my budget plan. It's a, we'll call it a mini budget plan, or mini budget addendum. So first of all, I do want to at least raise the idea with all of you and Mr. Janot, who's dialing in, number one, to consider passing a resolution to place a county tax overlay on the town of Washington. That's the first thing. So that's on the revenue side of what I'm offering here in terms of ideas.
You mean Meals and Lodging?
I'm just saying an overlay tax for now.
Okay.
We can talk later about how to characterize it or what it would be for. Also on the revenue side, I had a very thoughtful constituent call me, and it was quite timely given Revenue Commissioner Graham's recent presentation. I'd like to look at the possibility of enacting an ordinance or revising an existing ordinance to impose a land use related resurvey fee on property owners at the time of acquisition of property and land use to basically validate for the sake of the Revenue Commissioner that the acreage that is under land use is in fact correct. It was at least anecdotal evidence that there are examples on the books of where properties have been in the land use book for a long time, only to find out that the acreage on which the land use qualification was premised was incorrect. And I don't want to go too much into the details of how well that might work today, but I just, on the revenue side, just saying where we're going to generate money, and those are a couple of ideas. And then I'll dive into especially the town of Washington one in a second. On the expense side, Gary might remember this probably too from, I believe, one fiscal year ago. I would like to consider, or all of us to consider, and I will have to confirm the legality of it, but I'd like to put in our budget a placeholder amount just to see if it is useful to folks for what I would call a community cemetery fund. And that the idea there is we have all these cemeteries in the county that are sort of managed by different groups, organizations, etc. Many of them are at capacity, and just thinking about that part of our culture. What can we do from a local government perspective to help with cemetery maintenance, upkeep, etc. And again, I recognize there might be legal limitations on what we can and cannot do, so I'm really throwing that out there just as a placeholder, but it's potentially an expense item that I would like to at least have considered as we try to reach a balanced budget. Also on the expense side, Darren Stevens, Stephanie Clark, Janie Jenkins have really gained steam on my favorite cause here in Rappahannock County, a community automated external defibrillator program, and also are looking at more deeply at the implementation of Pulse Point, which is a AED CPR needed app, and the integration thereof into the county dispatch system. So as we think about fire services, EMS funding, etc., wherever it's accounted for, whether in the fire services fund or in our general fund, I ask respectfully that my colleagues consider a standalone budget item for ongoing community AED pulse point connectivity. It's critical, and I'm going to talk in a minute about why all of that is critical and why that relates to my hope that we can pass a resolution to impose an overlay tax in the town. Sort of a combined revenue expense question or point I would like to make. it was my intention when the school zone speed cameras went into place for the sheriff to keep that revenue. Somewhere that didn't happen, it was probably my fault for not stating the motion at that time to make that clear. So I know the dollar value of, or the revenue earned from the school zone speed cameras is almost de minimis. Is still in principle something I think should remain with the sheriff. And then just a general comment, I've kind of hit on it twice tonight, but I really want to look closely, because EMS and fire are such critical parts of our budget and our community. Kind of two sub-points. Number one, I really want to look closely at how what our accounting practices are with respect to revenue for and expenses paid into fire and EMS, and as a corollary to that, raise again the question and the possibility of eliminating the fire levy board process so that we, on the board of supervisors, can do our job on behalf of Rappahannock County taxpayers to ensure fire and EMS system optimization, efficiency, and identification of potentials of economies of scale that can be gained by reducing duplicative expenditures across all companies. And I think there are practical ways we can do that, including just eliminating the sort of middleman, so to speak, in the form of the fire levy board, and then looking at how our general fund and fire services fund are sort of configured in our general ledger for the county, and how we might just make adjustments to make our tracking of what's being spent on fire and EMS, whether in the form of reimbursements or direct expenditures for things like PAC 35s or ventilators, or et cetera, how that all works together. I think we can do a better job of keeping an eye on the whole picture from a board of supervisors perspective. Believe it or not, that was my intro, but I recognize it was long, and so I'll be quick. Schools. We have a joint session with the school board next week. I wish school board members were here tonight. I appreciate Gail being here on the social services front.
Shannon is online.
I was going to note that Shannon's online, and thank you for that. I also wish some members of the town council were here, because I never enjoy making public statements and then them seeing it in a video later. It never seems to go well, but there you have it. So I'll just make a public statement, and then I'll wait for the consequences, I suppose. But real quickly on the school front, and Bonnie, I'll be quick about these questions. I think these could be grouped together perhaps in like one single school question or school bucket of questions, however you want to do it. I don't want to like overload our budget question list and turn it into like 200 questions, but here it goes, and this is on school front, and Shannon is listening, I'm sure. So number one, identification of any employees or positions to which salaries are currently being paid, but are not actually working every day in the school. So employees or positions to whom or to which salaries are being paid, but those positions or employees are not working every day in the school. If such circumstances exist, I would like to understand both the total value of those salaries paid to employees not currently working every day in the school, and the reason behind those arrangements, which could include things such as discipline, ongoing litigation, etc. Number two, I would like to see a refresh of, I'll call it the quote-unquote top 20 salary and benefits summary that Dr. Grimsley and Ms. Witt pulled together previously. I think it would be perhaps a comparison of now to this time last year, but I'd like to see a year-to-year comparison of the top 20 positions in terms of salary and benefits, ranked in order from highest to lowest among the top 20. Similarly, I'd like to see top 20 bonuses paid out, and again, it's a year-to-year comparison I'm seeking with the base for that comparison being the latest available data, which I'll leave it to the superintendent, Ms. Witt, to decide how they want to show that. Another comparison I'd like to see, and Dr. Grimsley, please know that these questions stem from a number of inquiries I've received from citizens. They're not my own. I've just tried to configure them in a way that we can just tackle these one by one in a logical way. I'd like to see the top 20 salary increases paid out year to year within the school system, and a demonstration that all such salary increases were granted within the parameters of the school's written pay scale policy, and validation that no salary increases have been provided outside of whatever the school's pay scale policy dictates. I've asked previously about the assistant principal position at the elementary school. Similar to when Ms. Jewell was hired in Rappahannock County, one exercise I went through was I went and found other localities similar to ours, and I did my best with publicly available information to isolate front office costs in other localities. I think some were like Bath County, Highland County. And it helped me validate the fact that our front office, I mean, from a county perspective, meaning the county administrator and administrative staff, plus Ms. Jewell, if you aggregate all the salaries, that we were in line with counties like Bath and Highland. And that helped at least pave the way for me to support Ms. Jewell's position. And I think we can all agree today, especially, we are grateful she is here. And whatever price tag came with her coming here was well worth it. So on the school front, I would like the superintendent, Ms. Witt, to do a similar analysis of the elementary school and high school assistant principal positions, their compensation compared to other districts such like ours, and also revisit the question I raised at our initial meeting with the school board about what does the Code of Virginia actually dictate, because I'm still fuzzy on that point. I believe there's a standards of quality hook there, but yet the Code of Virginia is clear that the requirement for assistant principal positions, for example, in elementary school, are dictated by the total number of students. So I'd like that sorted out. As guidance, I would suggest locating at least 5 other school systems similar to ours to provide a useful apples-to-apples comparison of assistant principal staffing compensation, elementary school, high school, and then also an enrollment comparison across those localities so we can validate that what we're doing here in our school system makes sense in the overall grand scheme of things. And then finally, for the schools, I would like a similar comparison of total front office compensation. This kind of goes back to the example I was given about what I had done when Ms. Jewell was hired on, or before she was hired on. And that is take your, I guess here we call it our school board office, but take all the salaries, aggregate them, look at other districts such as ours, and again, try to achieve an apples to apples comparison, and show us how we compare in terms of total aggregate salaries in the front office. So that's what I have on the school front, and I'm almost
Mr.
done.
Whitson,
Yeah.
at the school board meeting last night, Dr. Grimsley introduced the rather comprehensive study hitting on many of those points. It is posted to their website, and I'm sure she'll rely on that and share that document with the board and yourself, and probably talk about it in your next joint meeting.
Thanks a lot, and I don't mean to chastise school board members for not being here because clearly I wasn't at the school board meeting. I mean, everyone's busy, so thank you for pointing that out. Just some minor things. I would like to go back to the voice over IP savings at some point, just understand very clearly like what we're saving, because I remember when Ms. Donahue and I came on board and we were looking at phone bills. Well, we thought that's where the rubber met the road in the county budget. I mean, it kind of did. It was crazy. It was outrageous. pay to a vendor that can't provide services. So that's always been my favorite topic, because it's something that you can say to taxpayers, can you believe this? And here's what we're doing. So I think there's a good news story there that would be helpful to flesh out. Let people know, hey, we're doing the little things, aside from the big things, to keep costs down. So thank you for all the work on that front. It's been a pet peeve of mine for 7 years that we have phones that don't work and we pay a lot for them. Here's what I'd like to say on the town front, and you know, I might be sort of the outlier board member on this, and I'm willing to accept that I am kind of being the disruptor. And as I always say to my counterparts in town government, which, you know, the town is within the district I represent, so I really want to achieve or preserve goodwill. And so what I'm suggesting here about an overlay tax truly is with wholly good intentions. It's not to antagonize the little Washington. It's not to antagonize the town government. It comes down to the fundamental question. Every year we talk about property tax increases. People are tax sensitive, and there is this significant amount of revenue, I would call it unrealized revenue, that sits fully within the people who visit the town of Washington, not residents. And I think it's always better to tax visitors than it is our own citizens, to the extent we can do that without driving visitors away. To this end, I would like all of you to at least think about whether you might be willing to agree to a resolution imposing on the town a county overlay tax. And Art Goff has done some initial legal research on this. I can't say that I have a super good handle on it. Gary asked a good point. Are you talking bills and lodging? I'm not sure what I'm talking about. I think it could be a public safety tax, for example, or it could be I don't know, another EMS tax, or an EMS public safety fee for visitors. On that point, I want to just pause for a moment and say that Councilman Schneider, who I consider a friend, who lives in the town of Washington, and who has put out publicly some of the information about his recent cardiac arrest. I think now it's all public, so I can talk about it. Councilman Schneider wrote a letter to the editor recently, and he said, you know, EMS funding must be a priority for the county, and I loved it because I know where he's coming from. And I showed up on the scene and I said, you're never gonna get me off my high horse after I survived sudden cardiac arrest. I saw that call that morning of a big snowstorm, and I am so thankful he survived, because it sure didn't seem like things were aligning the way that they did for me. And it's interesting because back in December of last year, in an extended olive branch attempt on my part, I sat down with the mayor of the town of Washington, Joe Whited, and you know, he emphasized that my request for revenue sharing really was upsetting because, as he said to the paper, the town is not going to pay for the courthouse. And I think everyone missed my point. I was speaking of revenue sharing with the town in the context of the courthouse, just to provide a tangible example of how the revenue is so significant that it essentially could cover most of the debt service on a courthouse project. But it was only an example. Revenue from the town would be incredibly beneficial to the residents of Rappahannock County, and it would only be on the shoulders of visitors. And I would argue that it wouldn't be much weight on the shoulders of visitors to the town. We're talking at least $30 million a year in meals and lodging receipts in the town. What I said to Mayor Whited, which seemed to resonate with him a bit more than my courthouse example, I said, Joe, you know, let me explain something. And I've said it publicly. I said to him, you know, I've said publicly that if I had not been in my childhood home in Wisconsin when I suffered sudden cardiac arrest, and I'd been in Rappahannock County, remember, this was in December. Brad Schneider, councilman, survived sudden cardiac arrest in January. I said, Joe, if I had been in Rappahannock County, I'm pretty sure that the only place that I would have had a chance to survive would have been, had I been, having dinner at the Inn of Little Washington, or a little less specifically, if I'd been in the town of Washington. I just said that because I knew it was true in terms of proximity to the Sheriff's Department, to ALS 1400, to Company 1, to our other great volunteers in the area, to people like Debbie Donahue over in Flint Hill. The town of Washington benefits tremendously by the current structure of our EMS system, and I think it's great, but it is also costly. And so I said that to Joe. I said, you know, the Inn of Little Washington is talking about, and Ms. Comer and I had a chance to meet not too long ago with the new general manager of the inn, who explained sort of a push to increase amenities at the Inn of Little Washington, including a long-awaited or long-planned spa. What I also said to Joe is that if Patrick O'Connell and the other tourist-related businesses in the town want to ensure an EMS safety net for an increasing number of visitors to the town, then it would be really helpful if the town could ask its visitors to fund through meals and lodging taxes that the county would impose, if they could fund that safety net that we are already providing. And darn if Brad Schneider in his survival hasn't just demonstrated that, in fact, there is an incredible safety net, a chain of survival that can be executed for visitors and for residents of the town of Washington. And increasingly, I think our entire county is, thanks to our long-standing volunteers, thanks to some incremental placement of paid providers, our county is a much safer place. And I feel great about that. What concerns me, though, is funding that going forward. We're talking about a penny on the fire levy side. It's not enough. It's not enough. Also want to add that we have a housing development in the town of Washington. I see the EMS calls, and Mr. Ockery's development and the inn's expanding amenities and the new spa will put increasing pressure on our volunteers. It'll put increasing pressure on the ALS 1400. And so I really respectfully ask that you all consider working with me to pass a resolution calling for the imposition of an overlay tax on the town, however it's characterized. And finally, on that point, and I say this to my counterparts on the Washington Town Council, the legal research we've done already is clear that the town government would have to agree to such an overlay tax. And I'm under no illusion that there is an appetite to agree on their part, but I would hope that, like me, Mr. Schneider, having beat all odds thanks to the chain of survival working for him and his wife, and a paramedic from ALS 1400 being on the scene in literally minutes, and a sheriff's deputy being on scene in literally minutes, followed by our volunteers, including Company 2 in Sperryville that plowed the road, and VDOT that plowed the road to the county line, and all of the people in between, including Fauquier County's EMS supervisor, providing advanced cardiac life support en route. This system worked for Mr. Schneider, and I'm so grateful that he took the time to write a letter to tell us, make EMS funding a priority. So in response, I'll say, Mr. Schneider, members of the town council, make EMS funding a priority and ask the visitors to your beautiful town to help all of us like they did Brad Schneider on the morning of the January snowstorm. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Based on everybody else's questions, I've got a follow-up to Mr. Russell versus Ms. Lucas, 1%. And I know Russell's was the one we were hoping for. As Senator Lucas backed down a little bit on her, there seemed to be some give and take happening, but I'm not clear on that.
They've basically set both of those aside and modified within the budget language, what I was explaining earlier about having to have the 20-year sunset. And it says,
But the budget is in conference. We have no idea what's gonna come out.
So they're sitting down, hashing through what the best route to take is.
And it's all tied up with the data center tax exemption, which is what they're really talking about. Everything else is just breadcrumbs, running wages.
yeah, such expiration date shall not be more than 20 years after the date of the resolution. And then, there's another key point here. The revenues from this tax shall not be used to reduce, supplant, or offset any amounts of local appropriations or local funding for capital projects described in the subdivision above on the date such tax is first imposed in the county or city.
That was the part of it.
That's, yeah, that's new
It's still
today.
in there. Darn, okay. I would be remiss since I'm on the board to say that I know I have brought up to the DSS board on several occasions the positions that have not been filled and how our board pays attention to those kind of things. And I can say pretty confidently that there is still hope of filling those 3 positions, 3 executive.
Right now, it's
And it's the cycle of, Gail is maybe the most tenured employee there right now, I think.
Me and one other employee started the same day on April 1st, 2021, and we're the most tenured employees.
Yeah.
After I arrived, we did have 3 departures due to retirements, but others, part of it's the nature of the work. The high rate of turnover in family services specialists is a statewide phenomenon. In the first 5 years, there's like a 40% attrition rate. And people leaving the profession, not just changing jobs. And there also just is the challenge, quite frankly, we compete within every local locality. There's a local department of social services. And all of them have the same positions, and quite a few of them, have higher salaries. And they also have different structures where some localities will offer 100% remote for some types of the positions. And in real life, we just recently were competing for an existing staff member with 2 neighboring localities. And we won, but that is the nature of these what we've been dealing with. So while I certainly cannot disagree with taking a vacancy factor of some sort, I really hope we can prove them wrong, but it is a struggle in both attracting staff. Our retainage has gone up, but we still experience it.
Thank you. Just felt I had to make sure that was clear. Capital expense policy for the county. I was surprised to see a $9,000 lawnmower listed under capital. Do we have, like the fire department has now, or agencies have the 25K limit? Is there a limit as to what we put on to our capital funding?
The policy that,
It's old.
I don't know it to be a policy, but the policy that the audit says is a policy says $5,000.
Yeah, that's a board policy adopted a long time ago.
Okay,
You're welcome to change it. It's in your policy.
okay. I think we should probably look at that at some point.
Yeah, it's a really good point. It's a depreciated
The offset to
asset.
that is if it's not in the capital fund, it has to be in the operating fund. So,
Is it related to like a depreciated asset, like a lawnmower is like a vehicle and therefore it becomes capital?
the useful life of the
Yeah.
project would generally say whether it's capital or not, the cost and the useful life. So in my previous world, it was $50,000 and at least 5 years useful life.
Okay.
Or if you had multiple smaller items that were all similar, like to me, the zero-turn mower and the tractor were similar kinds of things. Those two things together are each less than $50,000, but together they're more than $50,000.
Okay, I just thought that was interesting.
It is, yeah. Really good question.
I have heard pretty regularly for at least a year, the lack of understanding or clarity from the citizen standpoint as to what really goes into fire and rescue. And having I just think it's time that we're really very clear and open as to the expense, where the money's going.
Correct.
Are we using it wisely? Is there a way to save any money that could go to, another paramedic, if we need one? But I think it's time, and I know we have an opportunity to bring in, individual department heads, to talk budget. And I really would like to have a fire and rescue specific conversation.
Excellent.
Because I know everybody's working really hard and doing a great job. But I just think it's time to look at total expenses, and is there a way to do it better and save hopefully a little bit of taxpayer dollars along the way.
And that dovetails with some of what I've said.
Yeah.
Because I think there is an accounting piece, like how do we actually handle our accounting, how do we handle our books? And it's also an efficiency consideration. Are we being efficient? Are we spending twice for the same thing when we don't need to?
Right. Okay. So I think just like the insurance on the vehicles, it took us a while to really target that one particular area, but it ended up saving us 40 or 60,000, something like that, when we made the change. And I think everybody got on the same page when we knew it was going to be that large of savings. So maybe there's a few other areas that we could specifically look at and see if there's opportunity for sharing costs or buying the same products, or the medicine, the meds, and everybody that went under the county versus individual pay. There's just a lot of money out there that I'd like to have a better understanding of really what where it's going and why.
And if I could just,
Yeah, please.
I think in that conversation, it would be useful, and I think Mr. Settle will have great insight on this because he runs with Company 2. I would like to at least consider, or I'd like to ask about the fire levy process. It is by no means a rubber stamp process. We have thoughtful people on there watching out for taxpayers and making sure companies are reimbursed for what the services agreement dictates. But still, this idea of how do we have and you make a great point, is like, we gotta have a handle on what we're actually spending. Citizens have to have a clear view of that. And I can't help but feel as if that fire levy process puts an artificial sort of, call it an opaque, somewhat opaque window on what's being spent on the other side. And to gain clarity, I think, would be a way to gain clarity is just bring all of that handling of reimbursement funds here.
Yeah, and it may be that Mr. Settle will be in his first meeting soon if we haven't had it yet. And
17.
St. Patrick's Day.
oh boy. So maybe after that meeting, you can come back and he may agree with us. It may be time to make some sort of change, but I've always thought it was good for at least the taxpayers to know that fire levy board was really focused on the tax dollar that we have increased and are now recommending increasing again, where the money is going and details. And I think what you've been saying is bring that detail to the board because it is a large expense.
Yeah.
And let's have a better overall handle on it. Maybe we could do both. I don't want to waste time, but there might be a better way to move forward, given the population and volunteerism, everything that's going on. I just think it's time to really dig in. And I don't know how that helped you, Bonnie, in any way other than having someone come and we can just hash through those numbers at one of the meetings.
It's so that there's a lot of data out there through the fire levy board meeting agendas. But your services agreement is very general and does not suggest that the fire levy board, or the board of supervisors for that matter, has any authority in requiring efficiencies or things like that. There have been many recommendations or suggestions that have come up at the fire levy board on, well, how can we work together as independent volunteer companies to streamline purchases? And they never seem to go anywhere, and there's no authority to make it happen. But further dialogue in that area, I think, is valuable. And we have, as the county, have always wanted the fire companies and the association to drive those discussions, so it's not the county telling them what they must do, it's them coming together to find a way to be more efficient with operations and with spending, with their own plan, to further their own benefit, to come to the board and say, look at the great things that we've done. It's just that all those folks, most of those folks have day jobs, they have the middle of the night volunteer job, and it's difficult to get that done.
Yeah. But right now with the public safety and the chiefs meeting, I'm not sure if you could continue that for a little bit, that you couldn't have some of these really tough discussions and see what direction the chiefs are thinking.
Good idea.
They may have some ideas.
Good idea. If I may, just a couple comments. No, I think I agree. Of course, I have the first fire levy board next week, so we'll be looking at all those documents, and it's a voluminous amount of information there, and some of it is redundant from one agency, one company to the other. So I think it's valid. I think we can have both, Gary. As Gary described it, we want to empower the association and our volunteers, but we have a responsibility as well. And if we can mature that, I think it would be very, very beneficial to be more efficient. I think this conversation is much bigger. We're talking dollars now because we're in the budget cycle, but this is a much bigger conversation with regards to fire and rescue as a whole. I believe the situation we have now that with Chester Gap and Warren County and whether it comes to Foothill, I guess all that'll work itself out here soon. I think it's a sign that what's next is going to be the next issue or problem that we're going to need to resolve. So we got to get some smart people in the room. There's smart people in our own association. They are the chiefs and they are the members. But I do think we have value to bring to that too, from a fiscal responsibility. So it's a large conversation. I'll stop there and keep going on. I would like to see this board make it, and we, just my short experience with the Public Safety Committee, the good work that they do, I'd like to see this board make it a priority with fire and rescue. Not that it isn't for us, but to dig down into the weeds a little bit and try to set some kind of strategical plan moving forward. What do we want to be in a few years? Yes. I'd like to see Rappahannock stay like it is, volunteers out there. We know that's it's a challenge. But I believe we can figure it out, because otherwise we're going to be waiting and sitting for the next issue to come up. And who knows, we'll be spending months and months and months trying to figure it out.
And to Donna's point, this is definitely a can that we cannot kick.
No.
It's too risky for the public safety.
And I think the hesitancy all along is that any action we take, we're really cognizant of how that will affect the volunteer system. And so you're trying to take small steps that you can iterate and gradually make changes so that you're not driving volunteerism away
Yeah.
while supplementing, and you know, it is very tricky. And many localities have gone through it. Some have succeeded and many have not.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think you're, I mean, like, say, drop a bomb in the middle of just hold on. I think you do take baby steps, and, you know, sometimes we just gotta shake the snow globe up, you know, the little things I had one when I was a kid, I don't know if y'all had one, to shake it up, you know, and it settles back down, and the pieces and parts come back together, and you're working together, but, I'm not saying we need to shake the whole system up, but these are worthy conversations to
oh,
have.
yeah,
And who knows, we might wind up back at the same place, maybe we're doing it the right way, best we can, with what we got.
yes, sir.
All right, that was all I had. Anybody have anything else they'd like to add?
I just want to say I find all this very reassuring. You're all great partners, and I know maybe just a little bit, I've kind of disrupted the peace tonight, but please know it's well intentioned, and I only ask that you all in your spare time just think about some of the additional revenue ideas I've thrown out, and then some of the additional budget expense items that I've thrown out, just again for consideration, but with the understanding that it would take a majority of us to agree to any of that. But I really value you all, and I'm grateful to sit here with you all.
Thank you. And Bonnie, if you haven't heard it from all of us, I think I can say from all of us, we really appreciate the efforts you put in on this, and seeing it from year to year and having all that information on the website, I think is so valuable for not just us, but the citizens as well. They know what questions we're asking. They see the answers. I just really do appreciate the effort that you go in and how it's changed over the years, and year 7, so.
I feel confident saying that communities our size do not have the expertise that we enjoy.
Yeah,
It's great.
we are lucky. Did somebody have a comment, Mr. Curry?
Mr. Jones dropping off. He says goodbye.
Thank you.
I did have one item in this work session that was an opportunity for the board to inform me relative to negotiations with Chester Gas as it relates to the budget there, negotiations with Warren County. We're trying to set a meeting, might have a subset of board members. We're really just trying to get engagement, but I'm not empowered, a subset of board members aren't empowered to begin to work towards some end state of some agreement with Warren County. And so I would ask you to consider providing some input tonight, or perhaps your work session on Monday, to help us understand what are we aiming for? Are we aiming for 50-50 of the whole company? Is that a successful negotiation? Is it something else? Is it what we had before, but before a subset of board members or staff and fire and rescue folks can go meaningfully negotiate with Warren County representatives, need to know where the board stands.
And I think the email we received from their interim county administrator was take the past MOU and mark it up.
Yeah, he's asked me to mark up the MOU as a starting point, and I said, that'd be great. I need to ask the board how they would want me to do that. The past agreement was 60-40 for just the paid personnel. We know that the entire operation up there spends 60% of their time in Warren County. Is that our target? Or maybe, from a retail perspective, a loss leader, we need the station there. We're willing to experience some of the costs just to allow it to happen if Warren County is paying part of it. But then your citizens are paying more than what they're getting out of it. So,
Well, I can tell you I'm not prepared tonight to give you to make any suggestions to you or to my colleagues, but in part because, tonight I see the dollar amounts. So I think that is very fair. Your ask of us is very fair, and I'm looking at our, I keep losing the page, the budget, the calendar. And I know time is of the essence with them in particular, so, you know, I'll make sure that
So you next meet on Monday
Monday
evening.
and Wednesday.
That'd be better.
And Wednesday's a joint meeting, maybe not really the right time to try to have that
Focus on
conversation.
Monday.
And I've been out of the county quite a bit the last 2 weeks for a personal matter, and I would like an opportunity to confer with Miss Donahue, because I know she's got her eyes and ears on the ground, and Mr. Suttle is my counterpart in the Public Safety Committee, and we obviously will do that individually, you know, only
2 by 2, thank you.
Yes, don't worry, I understand the rules finally. No, I always have. Yeah, I think it would be nice to have the weekend to kind of get a handle on where things currently stand.
So we'll make sure that the Monday agenda prompts that
Yeah,
again, so we don't lose sight of
And
it.
it just, so I'm clear, what I would like to do on Monday is that we actually whittle this down to what our opening position, I guess it's our opening position, and whether that's 3 or 4 fundamental modifications to the MOU, or it's 7 or 8 or more, I don't know, but in my mind, I've got maybe 3 or 4 key points that I think need to be fleshed out, but I don't wanna
Sure.
get too far out over my skis in this regard.
Okay, I think Monday makes good sense. Everybody's gonna be here Monday. Good. All right, at this point, we're at public comment. Anyone wishing to speak, please be recognized and come up and give us your, I have something I'm supposed to read. Given the crowd, I think we're okay. Come up, give us your name and your district, and please keep it to 3 minutes or less.
Anita Ramos, Hampton District. I feel like you and force fed with a fire hose. But Bonnie really does such a terrific job. It's amazing. A little comment about using speed camera money. When I worked for that place, the dirty word Fairfax, when I worked for Fairfax Library, we had library fines. And people would say, oh, well, you're getting my money so that you can, you know, get more money for a raise or something. We said, no. Just like the police when you get a speeding ticket or, you know, driving through a red light, the money goes in the general fund. It goes to the whole county. And I think that's the way we have to think about it, so that people do not resent more so than you do when you get a speeding ticket. Because I got one this year in Fairfax, so I can say. So anyway, that's my little comment. I don't know what the law says officially, but I bet you that you can't keep that money within your department. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I don't see anybody else in the courtroom wishing to speak, so I'll open it up to Zoom. Anybody wishing to speak, please raise your Zoom hand.
Shannon's fallen asleep, I think.
Or she's working on her homework. All right, no Zoom hands, so I will close public comment. And
I'll put forward a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
a motion and a second, any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks a lot.
Have a great weekend, and we will see you Monday.